Okay, let's go.
I'm always thinking about ways to use fabric offcuts. In the past, I've loved using them in patchwork dresses, all different kinds of patchwork dresses. And if you're like me and you've got a pile of fabric offcuts in your stash, then I've got the perfect project. Meet your sweetest new vase. Think of it like a tea cozy for your flowers. All you need is like a jar or a water bottle, and once you've created it, you just simply slip it over and your flowers go in and it's gorgeous. This project is pretty simple, so let me show you how to create it. So the first thing I did was grab my measuring tape and measure around the size of my jar. I divided that into a quarter because that's the size of my template. It'll all make sense in a minute. I did a quick Google of some vase shapes for some inspo and I drew those up in Illustrator. I ended up drawing 6 shapes because I just couldn't make a decision. I loved them all. And in the end, I made 2 of those shapes. I'll make those templates available via a link that you can download either on my website or in the description. So I only have an A4 printer, so I printed those out, cut them out and had a look through, decided which ones I would really like to make. I made a few notes about some sharp edges, but I ended up not going with those ones anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if you design your own shape, just know that sharp corners are not going to work too easily. For the construction, I'm using a product called Style-Vil. It's a type of interfacing. It's more like a foam and it's going to give the fabric vase some structure. If you don't have anything like the Style-Vil, you can use normal quilting batting or wadding and that will give enough shape and structure for the vase. I've got my interfacing or my Style-Vil. I've got some fabric for main outside, fabric for the lining, some basic sewing tools, and we've got also some wide bias binding. I've got a few short ends of that in my stash. The size of the Style-Vil, you need a piece probably about A3 size, I'd say, which is about 45 centimeters by 30 centimeters. I divided that in half. I did everything sort of by eye using my template. So I cut firstly the Style-Vil to size and then I used that to cut my main fabric, and then from there I cut out the lining fabric to the same size. I did make sure to add some small arrows which would tell me what would be the top. Just it's kind of square but not quite, so I thought it'd be clever to make some notes just so I knew which part would be the top. I separated everything out, so I've got one piece each of the Style-Vil, the lining and the main fabric. So you put down first a layer of Style-Vil, then on top of that you put your lining face up and then you put your main fabric face down so that right sides are together for your fabric. It seems counterintuitive right now, but it will definitely make sense once you sew it and turn it out. So from there you stitch along the top and the bottom. It is kind of thick, so you do need to go slow, but I've sped it up here just so it goes quickly. But yeah, I was sewing this quite slowly just so it got through my machine and kept the layers neatly together. Probably a good idea to pin it. I didn't, but it would be helpful to pin that just to keep it going and keep it flat so you know all the edges are neatly together as you sew. And once you've done that, just repeat it for both. So you've got 2 pieces, you've got 2 sides of your fabric vase. So there we go, we've got the 2 pieces sewn together. That's what it looks like front and back. I actually went and trimmed some of the seam allowance off just so it was not so bulky. So I did that for both pieces. A nice little haircut on the seams. It kind of makes it easier when you turn it out, and yeah, it's good when you've got thick things to grade the seams like that. So there you can see how it's going to work. I'm going to start turning it from those 2 fabric pieces and the Style-Vil, or if you're using wadding, it will end up on the inside. Voila! It looks great. Just need to give it a little bit of a press on the seams just to make it nice and flat. If you wanted, you could top stitch along the top and the bottom. but I'm just going to iron mine. We do the same and we turn out the second piece and it looks lovely, nice and neat. I try to do a bit of a finger press, but I do realize, yep, definitely needs hit it with the hot iron. So I just do that. I've got my Aliso iron here and an ironing mat, which is super handy for just ironing small little sewing things on the go. So I make sure I give that a nice press just to try and flatten it out as much as possible. It works quite nicely, and I just even out those edges by giving them a little trim so that when I fold this in half to use it for my template, it's nice and even and I'm not guessing where anything is. So fold one side in half, lay the template on top, take a marking tool. I actually use a friction pen because it's what I happen to have on hand and it disappears with the hot iron. I haven't had any problems using it and I find it pretty accurate marking tool, so I like to use that. And then just go along, mark the edges. I think at this point I started to cut it out. Yeah, here we go. And I realized it was kind of difficult, so I added a couple of pins in there just to keep my layers together. So yeah, trace the template on the fold and cut those out. I'm doing a wavy vase shape and getting into those corners and cutting the corners or that inside corner through this thick material was a little difficult, a little bit rough, but don't worry if it's not perfect because those rough edges will get covered up later on. So just do your best to cut it out. If you have really nice sharp scissors, that will obviously help a lot. So you end up with a shape that looks like this. The top and bottom seams are the ones that you've sewn, so they're encased, and then you've got your raw edges from cutting those out, and you repeat the same for the second piece. So now you've got two there, and now we just want to sew those together with a basting stitch. I used a narrower seam just to baste these two pieces together. It just helps. We're going to cover them with the wide bias binding. So if you're confident, you could just go straight in with the bias binding. But I find basting a little bit just gives me more confidence. So I did that and I did cut the seams down a little bit. And then I happened to have this bias binding in my stash. I didn't go out and buy anything special for it. You don't need much, just enough to cover these edges. If you have sewing clips in your stash, they're really handy. So I actually clipped it on and sewed along that first fold line, trim the edges, and this is a neat finish. So you open your bias binding out, fold the end up, and then you fold back in at the fold line and then do your double fold, and then you'll have the bottom edge which becomes neatly encased, and then you fold along the whole way and stitch it down. Mine is not so pretty and neat, but a little bit of an iron at the end I think will sort that out. And honestly, no one's going to be looking that closely. You're just going to get the overall effect. I think if it's just stitched down, near enough is good enough, and I think it works fine. So that's the finished vase there. I think it looks awesome. I love it. I had this really beautiful fabric hand painted by Claire Ritchie, which is left over from one of the Close to My Heart projects that I run. If you don't know about that, you can look it up on my website. And then the other one is hand painted by Emily McDuff, and I whipped that one up in a second shape. And there you go. Beautiful. Just need to put some water in your jars, put them over, put the flowers in, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Enjoy! And if you like this project, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!